Waiting, when we begin to tell someone to wait, we need you to stay there. Stay where you are. And we look at the definition of waiting. Waiting could also mean that it's just delayed. Doesn't mean it's not going to happen, but it's just delayed for a particular time. While we wait, can I tell you, time begins to pass. And when time passes, growth begins to occur in life. And as time begins to but my time begins to pass, can I tell you, maturity begins to occur in our life. And as we begin to mature, we begin to see healing begin to take place in our life. And sometimes while we wait, we have time for emotional healing. We have time for spiritual renewing in our life. We have time for these things to take place while we are waiting. Waiting can also lead to a couple of things. Waiting can lead to frustration. Waiting can lead to anger in our life. But while we're waiting, we can also have time to reflect upon our own life. While we're waiting, we can be renewed. While we're waiting, we can look at our faith, and our faith could have time to grow. Our faith will have time to increase in our life. We're even finding peace maybe in the things that we're battling. Maybe the things that we are battling, we can find peace while we're waiting. I want us to look in the book of Isaiah chapter 40 and 31, and it says wait. Come on, does somebody say wait? It says wait and renew your strength. Also look at the book of Ecclesiastes 3 and 11. It said he made everything beautiful when? It said he made everything beautiful in his time. There was a period of waiting. It wasn't their time. It wasn't my time. It wasn't mom's time. It wasn't dad's time. It wasn't the next season that was happening in the year. He said in his time. Can I tell you, God has a specific time for things to happen in our life. I want us to look in the life of Abraham. When Abraham was waiting on God's promises to happen, Abraham began to make mistakes in his life, did he not? He made mistakes due to fear that was coming upon his life. Abraham found himself that he was impatient in life. Abraham found that he was lacking the trust in God in his timing of his life. Can I tell you, when Abraham was going to see Pharaoh, he began to look at his wife Sarah. He said, Sarah, I want you to tell them that you're my sister. You're not my wife. Rather, he wanted to tell him that you were my sister rather than my wife. This was motivated by fear for his safety that he had. He was ultimately lacking in faith of God's protection and God's provision in his life. Come on, anybody else have been there? Come on, let's look at the life of Ishmael and Abraham. Abraham and Sarah, do you remember? They were wanting a baby. They were looking for this bouncing baby to come into their life. God had already spoke the promise into their life, and they were trying to hurry up the promises of God as they were spoken. Anyone ever tried to hurry up a prophecy over your life? Have you ever tried to hurry up a dream in your life that God has given you in your life? Well, Abraham and Sarah, they were doing the same thing in their life. They began to take matters into their own hands. They wanted to help God with the promise. They wanted to hurry up the promise that God had spoken to their life. They were ready for this bouncing baby to come into their life. So Abraham began to take Hagar, which was Sarah's maidservant. He began to take Hagar in, and they began to have an intimate relationship. Can I tell you, when they began to have this relationship, Hagar began to conceive a child, and that child was named Ishmael. And Abraham struggled to trust God's promises completely. Yes, he not? And he didn't rely on God's provision. He did not rely on God's timing for his life. Come on, he's sometimes just like us. We begin to look at the promise. We begin to look at the situations that we're in life. Come on, and we begin to take things into our own hands. We begin to have our own solutions for what we see in life. We begin to hurry up the hand of God is what we try to do instead of waiting on the hand of God. When Abraham began to make decisions on his own, instead of waiting on God's timing, it led to consequences. And it led to tension within his family. Come on, can we just wait on God? God's orchestrating and God is working things out. I would encourage you, if you're in that waiting period, don't hurry up God's hand. God doesn't need your hurry. He needs you to trust his timing, trust his provision that he has. In the waiting, he's teaching you. In the waiting, he's speaking into you. In the waiting, he's increasing your faith in that waiting period of life. Abraham, he made mistakes. But these mistakes that Abraham made, this should serve us as a reminder that faith is not always a smooth process. Even those who are called great, that we read about in the Bible time and time again, that we teach in Sunday school, small groups over and over again, these people, they stumble along the way of life. But you see, what they learned and what we should learn in our waiting period when we make mistakes in life. They learned that faith was about trusting God's promises, even when it seemed impossible. They learned that faith was about trusting God and giving up on human solutions and temptations in life. You see, Satan knows that if he can bring us to the point in life where we feel that we run out of options in life, that we're between that rock and we're between that hard place in life, then he can have his way with us. In your waiting period, don't get stuck between that rock and that hard place. In that waiting period, trust God in the process. Your waiting has purpose. Your waiting is increasing your faith. Trust God in the process. Isn't it amazing what people are willing to do when we make bad mistakes? Isn't it amazing when they make bad choices in life? What about when we have an act of desperation in our life? When we have an act of desperation in life, it can lead down a long road of hard and substantial consequences in our life. That's what happened in the life of Moses. I'm sorry, of Abraham. But now I want us to look in the life of Moses. You see, Moses was another hero of the Bible. Let's look at the waiting period of Moses. Moses spent 40 years in the desert, and while he was in the desert for those 40 years, what did he do? He learned to commune with God. He learned to talk with God. He learned to have a relationship with God. He learned the leading of God. He learned the obedience of God. He learned to trust God when he was in that desert for that 40-year span of time. And another thing that he began to do when he was there and he was communing with God, he learned to lead the religious law. He learned just who God was. He said, I know you. I know your voice. I know that I know you. God had him there for a specific time, for a specific period, to prepare him for a specific task that he had for him. But he had to trust God where he was in his waiting period. You see, when God called Moses at the end of those years, what had he learned in that period of where he was? Have you learned anything in the period of wait where God has you? You see, Moses began to learn, he learned to be content with a lowly shepherd's task. You see, while he was in the desert, he was in a place that God prepared Moses through experience. He prepared Moses through spiritual lessons in the desert there. He learned the skills of a shepherd by tending Jethro's flock. And he experienced humbled life with the opposite of what he had beforehand. His life was now humbled. Beforehand, he had a privileged lifestyle. He had a golden spoon in his hand. He had everything that he needed at his palm of his hand. But now God had placed him in a lifestyle where he was humbled. He had to be dependent upon God where he was. He had to learn to commune with God. He had to learn to have a relationship. He had to learn to trust God. He had him in a desert place. If you're in a desert season right now, God's preparing you for a season of breakthrough. He's preparing you for a season of leadership. He's preparing you for something unique as you are in your desert season right now. You see, he learned these skills as he was a shepherd. He learned to be humble instead of living the privileged life that he had. In this season when he was in the desert, God also revealed to him his name, Yahweh. God revealed his plan to deliver the children of Israel. God began to transform Moses' life by preparing him for his future role. The 40 years of waiting and the 40 years of wandering in the desert was a season of growth and a season of preparation for Moses' future role as the father of the Israelites. God was preparing him in the wait. God was teaching him in the wait. God was increasing his faith and knowledge in him in the waiting season of life. In your waiting season, there is purpose in your waiting season of life. I want us to look at the adulterous woman. If you notice Abraham and you notice Moses, they had years in the waiting season, but doesn't always mean that you'll have years in your waiting season. It doesn't always mean that you'll have months. It doesn't always mean that there'll be just days in your waiting season. But whatever your season, whatever your timing may be, there is purpose in that season. And there is purpose that has been breathed on the inside of you. There is life on the inside of you. There is something that God is putting together, just like those dry bones that was in that valley. God is orchestrating. God is working it out. God is putting something together on the inside of those dry bones. There was once an adulterous woman, and she was waiting on Jesus, and Jesus was there, and he began to stoop over, and he began to draw. He began to write something in the sand, and the accusers that were around them, can I tell you, they had a stone in their hand. Can I say to you today, what has your accusers had in their hand? They had a stone in their hands. The accusers, they were quick to act on the law of the land. But the adulterous woman, she quickly found out that Jesus could offer her something that the law could never relate to. As she began to kneel in the front of Jesus and her accusers, her life was at stake. But it wasn't just her physical life that was at stake. It was her spiritual life that was at stake also. She was about to encounter a life that she had never known. She was about to encounter a life that she had never experienced before. She had never dreamed of something that was possible. She was seeking something that was better, and she found herself caught up in a situation she had no business being in. But she was about to encounter freedom. She was about to encounter an experience there. She was about to encounter a transformation. She was about to encounter a renewal taking place in her life. She was facing accusations. Come on now. She was facing accusations by a crowd of hypocrites. She was facing accusations by a crowd that had sin that was operating in their own life as well. But at the end of her wait, come on somebody, say the end. At the end of her wait, in a moment, she experienced freedom. She began to experience forgiveness in her life. She began to experience mercy. Come on. And she began to experience grace that was operating in her life. And Jesus said to her, sin no more and go your way. Today could be the end of your wait, where Jesus speaks into your life and says, sin no more, my child, for you're forgiven. Go your way. Look at the life of Jesus. Jesus waited 30 years before beginning his ministry. The 30 years that he waited, this was crucial, because in his wait of 30 years, he was preparing and he was fulfilling God's plan that had been written in the Old Testament. Look at the life of the disciples that they began to wait. They waited in the upper room, and Jesus walked the earth for 40 days, did he not? They were obedient, and they waited just as he had said, and something began to transpire in their life that they could never begin to explain inside of the upper room. They waited, they were obedient, and something happened in their life. Come on, if you're waiting and you've not seen anything happen yet, just stay where you are. Just be obedient. Know that you know the voice of the Lord. He hasn't left you. He hasn't forsaken you. He's seen you. He gets you right where you're at. Just as they were waiting and expecting something to happen inside of that upper room, can I tell you where you are in your season? You need to wait. You need to watch. And you need to expect something to happen in your life as well. Now let's look at the life of Paul in his waiting season. And Paul waited 3 days when he lost his sight. In his waiting, God had him in a place where Paul had lost everything. He had him still so that Paul could reflect on the voice of God that he had heard, that was a shining light that was coming from heaven. And he began to ask Paul, why are you persecuting me, Paul? In those 3 days, Paul was healed. In those 3 days that he was blind, can I tell you, Paul was transformed. In those 3 days of waiting, can I tell you, he was filled with power. Paul had been killing, and Paul had been persecuting the Christians. Can I tell you, Paul also, he wrote the majority of the New Testament. He had zeal when the Lord began to transform him. But can I tell you, his zeal was now for the lost. His zeal was relentless, is what it was. In that waiting period, can I tell you, he's got you waiting, because just as Paul had him, God has something special for your life. He has something unique for your life in your waiting period. Your period could be those 40 days, those 40 nights. Your waiting period could be just at the feet of Jesus as the adulterous woman. Your waiting period could be the 3 days as Paul would go blind for 3 days. At the end of 3 days, his life forevermore changed, and we're still reading stories from Paul today that is still changing lives. Can I tell you, your waiting period has purpose where God has you. Don't forsake the waiting period. That waiting period is actually a gift from God if you're obedient and you trust God in the process of that waiting period. The waiting, it has purpose. The waiting is not to drag you down. It's to prepare you. It's to allow God to work and to orchestrate things out, and then He's going to speak these things into His existence. While you're waiting, you're to prepare. While you're waiting, you're going to face many challenges in life. You're going to face many failures. You're going to face many mistakes in life in your waiting period of life. Maybe you feel like you've been in one of these situations. Abraham, Moses, the disciples, the adulterous woman, Paul. Each of those had different types of waiting periods, and different gifts and different purposes also. But maybe you felt like you've been in the valley of dry bones for so long, those bones are just not going to come together. Well, I'm here to tell you today that it's time for those bones. It's time for things to come together in life. It's time to walk out that purpose. But remember what the scripture said. It was in His timing. That timing is close. The timing is near. So don't give up in your waiting period. Don't throw the hat in on your waiting period. Don't make decisions on your own in your waiting period. God gets you. God understands. He sees your frustration. He sees your anger. He hears your questions. But in each of these stories where we see that there was a waiting period, God came through every time. And can I tell you, God is going to come through for you as well. Your calling, your purpose is as unique as you are. God's working. God's orchestrating. He's putting things into play, in motion. But He's also teaching you. Pass the test. Listen to your teacher. He's a good, good God. He's a perfect God. He's a loving God. And can I tell you, your waiting period has purpose. And your waiting season is almost over. So learn the lessons He's teaching you. And get ready. And get ready.